I'm here with Mo Quraishi, who is the founder of Instachew, and today we're going to talk about managing talent as an entrepreneur. Mo, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Jyll. Looking forward to this.
And so for those who've not heard about Instachew, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your business does?
Yeah, so Instachew, our vision and mission is to make pet care easier. And what we've done is we've built a technology-based ecosystem, so an app. And on our app, we have many different pet care devices, such as automatic pet feeders, smart water fountains, smart litter boxes, all integrated together to make pet care easy. And as we grow our users, we are in the process of adding services and subscriptions. So we'll have a full 360 solution for all your pet care needs.
So cool and so needed for pet parents around the world. And so you started this business, I think it was 6 years ago, is that right?
Yeah, correct. It was 6 years ago. And I got a dog around that time, and I realized, wow, this is tougher than I thought it would be. And I needed to make my life easier. And that's kind of where the idea spawned from.
If only I could have had an automatic baby feeder when my child was a baby, that would have been
Automatic
great.
diaper changer. What about that?
There you go. There's the next business idea. And so when you were just starting out, it was you and your co-founder. Who was the first employee you hired, and how did you decide what talent you needed to hire out for?
Yeah, so our first employee right away when we first started, it was myself and Ramin Sadat, who is the co-founder, one of the co-founders, I should say. And he was my neighbor at the time. We brainstormed this idea, typical story of, starting from your basement and moving on up. And when it was time to, scale the business, and as we realized our time was not as available as it was, but the business still had certain needs that were being unfulfilled. That's when we realized it was about I would say after a year to within the second year is when we made our first hire, and it was predominantly for sales. As mentioned, we are a product-based business with a tech component to it. So we did need a salesperson to do inside sales, reaching out to wholesale clients, reaching out even during what we used to do is a lot of trade shows, whether it's B2C or B2B. So we needed someone for that to support us in that. And that was the premise and the reason why we pulled the trigger on hiring.
And how did you go about finding your all-important first employee?
Well, this is a great underrated resource, but Facebook. So we did post a resume on Facebook. The great thing about Facebook that we found throughout the recent years we've been using it is that you're not limited to just North America. So if you have requirements, on the technical side, on customer service side, you can actually broaden your scope and hire outside of our borders. And this is great for startups because you can get, a workforce at the fraction of the cost that you would have to pay locally, which can definitely help. But in our case, we needed somebody locally. So we did do that via Facebook.
Wow. And how many people do you have working for Instachew now?
We're about 25 plus working for us right now.
25 plus. And so how do you decide whether you need to hire someone as an employee or whether you can work with contractor talent? What goes into that decision?
What goes into that decision is the nature and scope of the work. If it is a day-to-day requirement, ideally we'd want someone in-house versus a project base where we have the foundation already built and there's certain elements that we need support somebody to jump in and build out and then move on from. So that would be the defining factor for us.
And so can you give me an example, like what's an employee you hired recently versus a contractor you've hired recently?
For sure, yeah. So as far as an employee we hired recently, I'll use an example on our tech side for both employee versus contractor. So with an employee, we of course have our source code that we're writing for Android and iOS. So we need somebody foundationally that's our employee that's going to be around. So for that purpose, we need them. They're building the foundations of our app. Now, for our app, there's certain elements that we're planning on launching, such as services and subscriptions. And rather than hiring an in-house employee to build out certain elements of these objects, what we've done is we've outsourced projects. So certain parts of that project have been given to a contractor. Hey, we need you to forge this API connection between this and that. So rather than go through the entire onboarding process, we can tap into existing subject matter experts that already know the basic premise of what to do. So it makes it a lot faster. Budget-wise, it's a lot more friendly. And yeah, so those are two things: cost savings and time saving that you accomplish right away by doing something like this.
Cost savings and time savings, the thing all all people, I guess, want more of: time and money.
There you go.
And so when you're interviewing talent, do you have any go-to interview questions you like to ask?
Yeah, I think it's really based off the conversation that you have with someone. I like to know what I'm talking about when I'm interviewing somebody. So, for example, if I'm hiring for marketing, I would like to have a prerequisite understanding of what I'm hiring for. So I need to know some marketing terms. I need to know what I need essentially to ask the right questions, because it can help you differentiate between somebody who is, of course, being honest in their interview versus somebody who might be stretching the truth a little bit. And that can be catastrophic at times when you're in a bind and you need somebody who is skillful. So I think understanding what you're hiring for and then formatting and phrasing your questions accordingly is the best way to do it.
Any specific examples you're willing to share with us, or do you want to keep that under wraps for future potential employees?
Yeah, so I think from a perspective of a specific question, I think what I like to know is I like to dive deeper. Like, for example, let's use marketing as an example. We're in the process of hiring a marketing manager. And one of the questions I like to ask is specifically related to what type of ads you're running and why you would run these ads. And whether it's a remarketing campaign, whether it is a brand awareness campaign, I want to make sure that someone knows exactly what their audience is, specifically if they are a marketing manager. So I would ask a question related to that and ask them to cite some examples of previous ads that they've run that have accomplished these.
Yes, asking them about specific things they've done before and getting those examples versus just, what would you do in this situation or that situation?
Exactly.
And you mentioned earlier how catastrophic it can be if you hire the wrong person. So in your 6 years running this business, have you ever had to fire anyone or let anyone go?
Yeah, we've had to do it in two different situations. When in one situation where someone was the right person for that time in our business, but as our business scaled and grew, they were no longer the right person. So in that situation, we had somebody who was a tenured employee that we had to unfortunately let go because of the nature and needs of the business, and they were unable to fulfill it at this point in time. And there was no other, and they were unhappy and we were unhappy, and it was kind of just a mutual parting of ways, which was a very tough thing to do, especially if you have a established relationship with this person and you've known them for several years. And then there's also people who have just onboarded, and within a few weeks we realized this is not the right person, whether it's behavior, culture, or skill, right? So there's been several instances like that throughout our journey that we've unfortunately had to let people go.
And how do you prepare for that conversation, telling someone that they no longer work for you?
I think that it makes it harder the longer they've been with you, because you do have relationships that you've established, and there's the sentimental aspect of it as well. This person, the details about their background, their family, so on and so forth. So you forge that personal relationship. I mean, it's very tough. I think the first time we had to do it for somebody that was that close to us, it was very challenging, where even I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I had to second guess myself, third guess myself. I'm like, how do I do it? How do I do it? I don't want to hurt their feelings, so on and so forth, right? So I think at the end of the day, like, you have to be able to shut out the emotions and look at it from a rational business sense and say, okay, we wouldn't be in this situation if everything was operating smoothly from a business perspective, and then kind of just focus on that. And there's no hard feelings, of course. Uh, Typically what we do is, we're always willing to give our employees, the referrals they need, a heads up so that they can make the necessary changes. Of course, something like this is very, very important, life-changing event for a lot of people, but there should be, a cushion on which they're able to land, and support you can provide even after the fact. So that's kind of what we try to do, but there is no easy way to do it or way to prepare yourself. It's just, you have to siphon out the emotion and focus on the reason why this is even happening to begin with.
Yeah, leaving emotion out of the decision-making communication, but it sounds like you let it back in afterwards, ensuring that they're taken care of, and as much as you're able to, depending on the circumstance, at least help them find their next step.
Agreed. Yeah.
Great. Well, Mo, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I know the small business owners listening to this really appreciate it, and wishing you all the best in your next steps with Instachew.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Jyll.